When you get knocked down, you get up and you keep on going. If you believe in what you're doing, you march forward. And so I say to all of the people, not just in the great region of Battle River Crowfoot, but right across this country, to anyone who has been knocked down, but has got back up and kept on going, you haven't given up, so I won't give up. Together, we will work together, we will fight together, we will sacrifice together, so that we can once again restore a country that is strong, self-reliant, and sovereign. That is the country we're in this for. That is why we stay united. That is why we go forward. May God keep our land glorious and free. Thank you very much.
Wow. Pierre Poilievre, in the wake of his election or by-election win last night in Alberta, I'm surprised he didn't burst out into I Got Knocked Down, But I Got Up Again, the song. James Mennie is on the line. Jim, yes, okay, resounding victory, as they say, which is something that people had said he'd need to see. He got it. Now what happens?
Well, it's kind of interesting because you would think that after all of the travails that he's gone through, the fact that he is really on the downside when it comes to polls and surveys and the opinions of Canadians on the Carney Liberals versus the Poilievre Conservatives, that there might be perhaps a softer tone, a more conciliatory tone. Indeed, even the text of the speech that we just heard was sent out to newsrooms today with the headline, "Back in the Saddle Again." So if you had any ideas that the Conservative Party of Canada had aspirations to being more than a rump for Western Canada, think again. But all that said, he's got a lot of challenges, and it's not just the fact that his return to the House of Commons was essentially facilitated, as we have discussed over this week, Aaron, perhaps the safest Conservative seat on the planet Earth, one with 80% of the vote. He's got to convince Canadians he is the guy. And the problem is, even with that gap, even while he was still getting all kinds of coverage, as if he was still a leader of the opposition from mainstream media, the fact is the Liberals are cutting his grass. Leger conducted a poll mid-July, so let's say it's a month, and it's pretty quiet in the summer poll-wise, but you've got a satisfaction rate of 55% with the Carney government. In fact, if an election had been held last month, 48% would have voted for the Liberals compared to 35% for the Conservative Party. And once again, as we have to say with our voting system, a lot of that 35% is concentrated in Western Canada. So in other words, forget about Ontario and Quebec. Oh yeah, by the way, did I mention that Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, seems to be campaigning for Poilievre's job in all but saying it out loud? And I think he's coming into a far tougher battlefield than he left. I think he's facing, as I said, a lot more challenges. And of course, the real question is, how long does the Conservative Party of Canada's caucus want to remain on the opposition benches? Aaron, they have been there for 10 years, which is almost like a prison sentence. There's nothing on the immediate horizon that suggests they'll be coming out of there anytime soon, or indeed even in time for the next election. But all in all, I get the impression that there are perhaps a lot of people are keeping their mouths shut right now, saying, you know what, Mr. Poilievre, it's time you change your style. It's time you change your tone. And as far as Mr. Poilievre is concerned, no, I don't think so. I think I'm going to keep everything the same way as it was before, and presumably get different results. But some people say when you do that, that's the definition of insanity.
I will point out that, and I heard Nick Nanos talking about this earlier, I think it was on with Vashi today, right? That the spread between, never mind parties, but between leaders is huge, right? I think Mark Carney's over 50%, Pierre Poilievre is down in the 20s. And my first reaction to that was, out of sight, out of mind. We've not heard a lot because there have been no fights in the House of Commons. He's not there. I wonder if that begins to change. And I wonder too, Jim, to be fair, if given the fact that, we're still in this trade negotiations with very little to show forward, if this is what starts dominating talk when the House resumes?
That's an excellent question. And the idea now is, but once again, it's tricky, Aaron, because if you want to turn around and start trying to deflate the whole elbows up movement, which I mean, you and I have criticized it, and I think justifiably so. but you're playing with fire once again, because remember, one of the things we would hope that Mr. Poilievre has distanced himself from or has put away in his box of political toys is the idea that Canada is broken. If you want to turn around and start going down that route again, be prepared to become not even a very lengthy footnote in Canadian political history. You have got to change the channel on your vernacular. You've got to change the channel on the message that you've been sending. I haven't, even with his, let's say, his time in the wilderness, if you will, Aaron, I've seen no indication that is changing. I've seen no indication that kind of vindictiveness, that kind of pettiness, that kind of highness of character has changed on the part of Pierre Poilievre. And I'm very, very sorry. That's what cost him the election. That's what cost the Tories the election. You and I had the conversation even when I was ranting and raving about Justin Trudeau. My biggest problem with Justin Trudeau was he was handing the country to Pierre Poilievre on a silver platter for no other reason than the fact he was Justin Trudeau. When that factor was removed, we saw what happened to the polls. We saw what happened during the election. The only person who doesn't seem to have learned a lesson from the experience seems to be Pierre Poilievre. So it's going to be very interesting to see if he comes out swinging, if he comes out nasty, and if he comes out rude. Because, quite frankly, I think most Canadians, were still very dissatisfied with his conduct. And I really think that, that stupid old question, which leader would you like to have a beer with? I think the real question is, which leader would you like to go on a long car ride with? Yeah. And I think that's far more indicative, I think, of what people are willing to put up with. I don't think Pierre Poilievre would score very highly.
I don't know. I don't know if there's a softer side or different side, however you want to frame it, to Pierre Poilievre. I think it's the old what you see is what you get, and that's always going to be what it is.
Well, I'm sorry. Then you're going to have the same result. And I've said before, even myself, my character is small c conservative. If you're a conservative, an actual conservative, not someone who's part of this coalition between the Canadian Alliance and the Reform Party that calls itself the Conservative Party of Canada, but if you're an actual conservative, you're an orphan, and you're going to stay one, apparently, for the conceivable future.
All right, let's talk about what's happening in our own backyard. So Valérie Plante coming out today suggesting all of a sudden, amazingly, with only a few months left to go before a municipal election, some new money to fight homelessness. But at the same time, telling Quebec or suggesting to Quebec, we need a minister specifically for homelessness. Lionel Carmont is not going to do the job.
Well, on the one hand, she's right, but on the other, she's absolutely wrong, because the reality is anyone who has spent any amount of time covering the issue of homelessness knows that it is not as simple and as black and white as is made out by a lot of the news coverage that the issue gets today. It's not because of a lack of housing. It's not because of the inequity of income or revenue. The fact is we're talking about a larger scandal that involves the Quebec Health Department, specifically the provision of mental health and addiction services, which virtually are non-existent in the regions of Quebec, which is one of the reasons why so many people were forced to come to Montreal seeking help and simply couldn't get any. The infrastructure to accommodate the homeless is, of course, very small. It's based on the attitudes and the numbers we had back in the 60s and the 70s. Yeah. But it's not. It isn't an easy problem. Yes, it does take not just a cabinet minister, but you know what? Honestly, it takes a premier. It takes a prime minister. It takes someone who is in charge of everything, who can push all the buttons on all the control panels to say this has got to be coordinated and this has to stop. The idea that somehow this has become a part of our society is wrong. And the idea, and it's not a matter of piling on the homeless. The idea is homelessness is not something that should be acceptable in the 21st century in Montreal, in Quebec. Until that message is heard loud and clear and acted upon in a very loud and clear fashion, we're still going to have nothing more than a lot of slogans, a lot of posturing, and a growing number of people who are sleeping rough, as they say in England, in Montreal and elsewhere.
Jim, before I let you go, just give me your take real quick on this McGill study on bicycle paths, suggesting we need twice as many if we want to satisfy the number of people out there. And what you thought about this? Have you seen it?
Aaron, I'm on vacation from the Gazette right now. No, seriously, let me finish. I have been on my bicycle every day. I live across the river from Montreal, where you'd be hard-pressed to go anywhere without finding a bicycle path. But that's where I am. When I saw that study, I just rolled my eyes and chuckled rather ruefully, because the fact of the matter is, maybe if you run it through the computer, those percentages will come in. Oh, it's a minor inconvenience for motorists and for cyclists. The last column I ever wrote for the Montreal Gazette, Aaron, said it accused City of Montreal of creating a dangerous myth, which was that Montreal is a cyclist paradise. It is anything but. Whether it's traffic control, whether it's traffic lights, it's a very dangerous place to be. So the idea that you want to extend that even further, as far as I'm concerned, is really playing with fire.
James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Got it, Matt.